Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Tonight, we're going to talk about scrap metal and adult pacifiers. What do you think, Andy?
I think that our good friend Ned.
You didn't think that was coming, did he?
Our good friend Ned was just talking to us about those two things, right?
Yeah.
And-
Blame Ned.
Right, Ned gave you a great idea about adult pacifiers.
Mm-hmm.
The
So if you don't
part,
hear Andy talking a lot tonight, guys, it's because he's practicing.
The funny part about this whole thing is Ned, when he was doing his show, he asked me if we were going to hear, if people were going to hear my laughing at a joke he said at the beginning of it.
Yep.
And then you just start that whole thing out. And Ned is laughing back there. So, yes, scrap metal and adult pacifiers. Boasting about tomorrow.
It's very ironic because, we're going to read about boasting about tomorrow. And I cannot wait to boast about the tomorrow where I purchased the adult pacifier for Andrew.
I think that is a fantastic idea.
Exciting.
But we don't have one now.
No,
so we
but
can
we
go
will.
ahead. I have lots to say before the adult pacifier comes. Alicia is laughing so hard right now.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Alicia, did you even catch that one? Did you? It was a good one.
She did.
All right, well, we're in James.
James.
Yeah, chapter 4.
Uh-huh. Verse 13.
Are you going to read?
Not on your life.
Not on my life.
No. Mm-mm.
Andy does know how to read, guys, I promise.
It's a pacifier time.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Very funny. I'll remind you every time. All right, so chapter 4 in James, we're going to finish it. 4 whole verses, 5 whole verses.
We got
Ready?
it. We got it.
All right, verse 13. Go to now, you that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year, and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. For that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now you rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin.
Yep. We could preach a whole bunch on
There's
this.
a couple things.
Yeah. What do you see?
Well, I mean, I love this whole... I used to be a very big planner. Very big planner.
Imagine that.
Like, my whole childhood, even you ask my mom or my brother, they'd be like, yeah, Summer said when she turned 18, she was moving to California and all. I'm like, I don't even remember that. But, like, I had all these plans and, you plan your whole life out. And at this age, I'm going to do this. And at this age, I'm going to do this and that and all these things. And I did that for a very long time until probably very recently in the last couple years. But it's silly. And even God says it's super silly because, first of all, you're assuming that you have a tomorrow, which is ridiculous, right? Because why would we assume there's a tomorrow? We don't know, right? Like, I mean, you could die right now.
Absolutely.
Jesus could come back right now.
Good likelihood. Right
There is no tomorrow. So I think... People say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with assuming for tomorrow? What's wrong with planning for tomorrow? But, like, I think there's a danger in it if you count on tomorrow.
Yeah, so if I was going to tie in scrap metal and pacifiers, here's how I would have tied it in, right? With an object lesson. Listen, scrap metal is a bunch of stuff that somebody previously thought was amazing, and they could not have seen that it would ever end up as scrap metal. Right? They made something, whatever it is, and it was useful, and they loved it, and maybe somebody else used it and loved it, and somebody else, and eventually the usefulness of it, right, wears off. Somebody scraps it, says there's really no value in this anymore. Let's repurpose it, right? I think that happens right here. Like, a lot of times we're looking at things, right, and if we're not careful, we're planning for things that aren't going to have any value. Like coming out in the future, right? Like, we look at stuff now, and we're like, oh, this is it. Like, this is all that we need in life, and we can't imagine life without, right, our little Mr. Coffee pot, right? And it's funny because
Ninja coffee.
Right, because then what happens? Keurigs come out and a bunch of other stuff come out. Now we can't be like, wow, you know what? The idea of getting the coffee ready, like, it's in a little pod.
Or you get sick and you can no longer drink coffee.
There's a lot of things that happen that turn our dreams into scrap metal, right? And really, the answer to that is get a pacifier, right? Be quiet, right? So you can think, you can dream, you can do all of these things, but we need to be careful because we've talked about it, and people in our circle talk about it a lot. Our words have value, but they also have power, right? So we need to be careful about what we're saying about the future, what we're locking in for the future.
Yeah, I think, there's definitely like danger in that. The other thing I think is like, if you, like, this was my thing at least, like I was so focused on tomorrow, what are we doing? What's your 5-year plan? You know, like all that stuff, that you're totally useless today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, it's just like, and people fight, no, I'm working toward this thing. Okay, that's great. Like, what, again, what if you die right before that thing? What if you die right before you accomplish that thing? What if it's right before retirement and you're going to get your bajillions of dollars, but you die? Like, what did you accomplish? And like, what are you doing for the Lord in the meantime if you're just planning? It's super easy too. I think it's dangerous because the enemy has a huge advantage over you because you're in that autopilot mode I've talked about. And you don't even look at today for what today is. You miss the opportunities right in front of you that are walking by or like walking up to you because you're like, oh no, this is not my goal.
Yep.
This is my goal.
Yeah, how many times do we pass up the things that God has for us because it's not packaged the way that we have envisioned? Or
it might change the end game.
Exactly. I think about that. You know, there's that little adage that says, you know, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Right? That whole idea that we're so focused on what's out here that we're not seeing what's in front of us, right? It's funny because I have trifocals because I'm old, right? And a few weeks ago, people, you know, would have noticed that I was having a real hard time because I broke my glasses, and the pair that I put on no longer were trifocal in nature, right? So I could focus long distance, but I had no short distance. And I'm thinking, like, how relevant that was. Like, I couldn't see what was right before me. I could see out here, but not here.
I'm surprised you didn't preach that.
I probably will preach that. It took me a while to admit that I have eye problems, right? So, like, that's the boasting, you know, like, I'm getting old. But I think what you're saying, Summer, is so relevant to our listeners, right? Sometimes God gives us dreams and visions of what the future's going to be like. I think a lot of people have fallen in this boat in the last year with the whole coronavirus. We're trying to figure out what God's doing. We sat with a gentleman today who, you know, was talking to us, blowing our mind with the things that God is presenting him right now. But through the whole time, he kept saying, God has warned me, cautioned me, that what the enemy is going to tempt me with is wanting this too much, right? Wanting it so bad that I just hurry up the process. And again, you and I personally have seen that, right? Where God seemingly has us and other people in a wait period, right? And what we do in that wait period, like, it matters, and we can cause a ton of damage while we're waiting because we're waiting impatiently for that which God has promised us.
Well, we had a very similar experience with like a new ministry opportunity that we were getting where it looked like on our end like, oh, it was going to be 100%. But we weren't quite there yet where God said it's 100%. But we're like, oh, it pretty much is. So we started doing stuff and buying stuff and getting stuff and doing things, and God kind of told me, like, stop. Like, you're not at 100%. I did not tell you 100%, even though it looks, and I've told you you're probably going to have this, like, you really didn't get it yet. And I was like, okay, we have to stop, because who knows? Like, and that's exactly what this is. Like, you're boasting in a way because you're being assumptive, and it's like a pride thing. Like, well, I know. You know, well, I know because God said this, or he showed me this, or, I mean, look at all these signs. Look at all these people that are saying, yeah, probably, we just have to wait for this and wait for that. And you're like, oh, it's good. Like, what if? What if it just falls through? Don't you look like a fool? And then you're like, oh, sorry, God. Sorry, all these people, too.
Exactly.
That you get their hopes up. Like, what if you tell everybody something?
Exactly.
And you promise people things.
And that's the deal, isn't it? That a lot of times we get into the mode of collecting resources for
Yeah.
that which we know is coming, right?
Right.
Well, what if God somewhere in the middle says, hey, like I got a better deal, I got something else for you, right? A lot of churches get involved in this. We have thousands of dollars saved away for a rainy day or for a project or something like that. And then a need comes up in front and we say, like, yeah, well, we can't meet that need. What do you mean you can't meet
Right,
that
it's right
need,
there.
right? I think of that. People often save for cars. They'll save for a year for a good down payment on a car, and they think, I got to wait till December, got to wait till December, got to wait till December till I, can look for a car. And then God provides some kind of an opportunity to get a car, and you'll be like, but it's not December yet. Like, I can't, like, what do I do with that, right? Like, I have to wait. And I think the whole idea of what James is really saying here is be fluid about today.
Right.
Right? Don't tie up resources that could be used today for tomorrow because you don't know if tomorrow is going to come.
Right.
Don't forget about today because you're so busy looking for tomorrow, right? And don't misuse and mishandle today.
Yeah.
Today is a tool to lead for tomorrow, right? Isn't it? In order for me to get tomorrow, I got to get through today.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I wake up every day now and I'm just like, thank you, God, for today. Like,
Yep.
just for today. Like, it's crazy. And I don't know. Like, some people have to go through really traumatic things, I think, to get there.
Yep.
But I don't know. Like, I think we need to think about that more. Like, I think for us, maybe it's easier to think or feel that way sometimes because we're surrounded by people going through all these traumatic things. Might not be us, but like, we're hearing every day about somebody dying or being in the hospital or
Yep.
some crazy thing happening. And it's just like, I'm glad I'm breathing right now. And I'm glad that I'm awake. And I'm glad that I'm here and I'm functioning and right now.
Yeah, well, again, I tend to be somebody that struggles with the whole worry about tomorrow, what's going to happen with this, what happens with that.
Yeah.
And so, this is a reminder, right? Because, again, it's not just a reminder, but James takes it in the last verse there a little bit further, right? First, and I mean, in verse 16, he talks about you boast in arrogance, right? So there's an arrogancy about, hey, I'm okay for tomorrow. That's 401ks and a bunch of other stuff, right? That we need to be careful about. But I love verse 17, and I really dislike it, right? It's the whole thing that Jesus said also. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it's sin, right? So when Jesus says, don't worry, hey, Andy, would you think about not worrying today? Or, hey, Andy, why don't you consider not worrying today? Or, hey, Andy, it's a suggestion that you really don't waste your time. You could use it any way you want, but probably not a good idea if you worry, right? Jesus looks right at people and says, don't do it. Do not worry. So what James adds to that is, if you know you're not to worry, and you do it, you're sinning. Right? And worry always comes when I'm thinking about this. It's always when I'm thinking about the future.
Right.
Whether it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, 25 minutes, right?
Well, it's because we don't know. We need to know.
It's exactly.
Because even if you knew the outcome was going to be bad, you'd be okay with it.
Yep.
Because you knew.
Right, and you prep for it.
Right.
Right? You'd be ready for it.
But you just need to know.
Right. Again, it's one of the creative things that God does with you and I and everybody listening. We're not guaranteed the next breath. So we have to live life enjoying this breath, not knowing if we're going to get the next breath, but ready to anticipate and experience the next breath.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how life happens. Like, I want to embrace this moment. I might not get the next moment, right? And if I don't somehow use this moment, right, and I don't get it, then that's sin, is what James is saying. Like, you don't get to skip over moments, which is really what I would like to do in life.
I had a really big worry problem, like forever. Like we were just talking about this. Like I get that from one of my parents, maybe, like, a warrior. But like I didn't even know it was me. Like I was just constantly, and people look at you as then like the negative person, because when you're constantly worrying and you're vocalizing worry, then you're negative because you're looking for all the bad possibilities and all the bad possible outcomes, and this is gonna go wrong, and you're just worried all the time, like a couple years ago, I was just like venting to one of my friends about it, and she just flat out said to me, she's like, Summer, like, you being so stressed and worried about this is just flat out a lack of faith in God. And I was like, ooh. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I mean, I wasn't mad at her at all. I was like, thank you for saying that, because this is 100%. It's absolutely 100% true. Like, if we're worrying about stuff, like, why would you worry? Like, when God tells you, don't worry, cast all your cares upon him, like, all the things he says, like, he will be your everything, right?
Yeah.
There's zero reasons and 500 reasons in here for him telling you not to worry.
Yep.
So when we do, that's it. That was a scary, sad thing to me. I was just like, yeah, I don't have faith in God. And I was like, oh, I don't want that. Like, nope, we need to squash that.
Well, and worry can keep us from our future, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're worried about it, then we might not do it. So the funny part about the scrap metal thing is, can imagine if the person who's going to make something started worrying about, well, is it eventually going to go for scrap?
Yeah, I may as well not even do it.
Right. You'd be like, I don't want to do that.
I might fail. I might not. I should just not do it.
I think of all the old farm equipment that I have around my house, right? The stuff that we can't use, has trees growing up through it, all kinds of stuff. And I think of like, man, when that was made, it was brand new and somebody was anticipating using it and excited because it was, cutting edge stuff, right? And somebody created that and thought of it and did all these things with no worry that, it's going to be obsolete. Right, like it's going to be sitting in somebody's yard someday as a lawn ornament. But we need to be careful, because if we're not, what happens is we start looking at everything we do and going, well, is it going to help me have money in the future? Is it going to help me do this? Is it going to help me do this? And if it doesn't, then I don't want anything to do with it, right? Yeah. And so we would look at that, like even with jobs. A lot of times we have an end goal, and we're like, and a job comes up, and we're like, yeah, I don't see how that helps me get to the end goal.
Right.
And so we wouldn't.
Or like a pay cut.
Pay cut.
That happens all the time, like in jobs when you're moving up the ladder, like in sales.
Yeah.
We'd always say, like, the lowest guy makes the most money.
Yep.
Right? The sales rep.
Yep.
The manager makes nothing.
Right.
And then, like, you become a DM and you're up here.
Yep.
So it's like you have to go, boom, to go up. But it's just like, that doesn't make sense.
No.
And you know how many people I know were sales reps for 15 years because they refused to, like, make half for 2 years maybe?
Right.
Or 3 years? Just to go further.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, it's funny.
But and I think I love that example, because I think that's what God does with us all the time. And be like, hey, are you willing to take a step back so that I can put you 3 steps forward? Right? And I think sometimes that happens. Like again, we were talking to a friend of ours this morning, and he started really getting into what he really felt God was the future. I want to do this. And then God had to kind of look at him and say, like, you need to go back a step, because I don't want this to be about debt, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, now everything he's doing is like, well, I can't go into debt. Like, where you could make anything happen because you could just accumulate debt. Yeah. Now he's saying, now I got to do it God's way. But now God's opening up opportunity and provision. Right? And I think sometimes we're so afraid of something looking like or feeling like, God forbid, that we go backwards a step, that we're missing out on the 2 steps forward that God has for us. Like, until you guys do this right, right, I'm not giving you this.
That's so funny that you said about the money thing, because, like, I literally just had a friend doing the same thing. Like, God told her, like, pay off your debts.
Yep.
Right? So she's been very good. Like, okay, I'm paying off my debts. And there's this thing that came up this month where, like, she had to get her car fixed and stuff, and it was going to be a lot of money. And there was this other bill, and she was like, well, maybe I should pay the other bill and then the debt. And I said, just pay the debt first.
Yep.
I said, maybe you'll get a discount on the car stuff. And maybe I'm like, I think if you do what God said, it'll just work out.
Yep.
Right? And it was so funny because she did it. And then, like, her dad or somebody, like, sent her a couple extra $100. And it was just, like, exactly. And I'm like, see? Like, it's so cool. I love when stuff like that happens, because it's just like a little thing. But, like, every time you take those little, like, nope, just right now I have to not worry about the future. Not worry about this, how is it going to go, because the one thing I know is God said do this. So all I need to do is this. and then he'll make everything else work out, and he just does. And it's so cool.
Well, is it possible, because I love that, is it possible that our refusal to take the step back is stopping the future from happening?
Absolutely.
And so then we get frustrated, and then we just eventually give up, and we just make the
Well, and
future
we're like,
happen.
see, this is how it goes.
Yeah, right. So God says, hey, be patient in this parameter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he says that if you can do that, I'm gonna catalyst this forward.
Yeah.
But we end up saying like, oh, I can't do that. And so we make something happen, and then we just create all kinds of problems. Again, I think that's what James is saying here. Like, listen, be careful. Like, be careful, because when you know what you ought to be doing, when you know that there's a right way to do something, and you're not doing it, you don't have to wait for God to convict you.
Mm-hmm.
You already know it's sin, right? Like honoring people, respecting parameters, respecting situations, all of those kind of things, right? You don't, like, I know that there are people out there who want to tell off their boss right now, right? They go to work every day. They know their boss is in a, not as smart as they are person, right? And they want to just tell them off. And God says, no, nope, the parameters are this. You have to have a respect, right? You have to give respect for these parameters. And then I will work through that, right? And it's amazing that the people who humble themselves and do that, how often is it that God somehow, some way removes the problem or removes the perspective of a problem, and all of a sudden we see somebody differently? Now all of a sudden we have no desire. I know people who have asked for prayer to be moved 1,000,000 times, right? And then all of a sudden something happens and they're like, no, I want to stay right here.
Yeah.
I want to be here, and I want to work with this person.
No, and the coolest thing I think is like God, I feel like when you do those tiny little things, like when you just act solely out of faith and right now, like he overabundantly blesses you. Like, and I've seen it so many times. Like, and even the friend I was talking about with that money car thing and whatever, like we were talking about the loaves and fishes and how there was extra, right? Like he could have been like, I'm God, here's the exact right amount for these thousands of people.
Which we were excited
just to
about.
show off,
Yep.
right? Like the exact number would have been really cool and spectacular. Like, no, here's extra. There's like all these baskets of extra. And like same thing, she got extra. The friend we were talking to earlier today, way extra.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they're tiny things that we have to do. Like they're not, when you break it down, they seem like a big deal. Like when we choose it, we're like, oh my gosh, like, but it's really small.
They're things that we don't want to do, right? They're things that are going to make us have to sacrifice a little bit or struggle.
Or not even.
Bit.
It's just in our mind, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in her life, in his life, did they really sacrifice, or did they just in their mind take a risk?
Yeah, I think what happens is you have to admit that God's way is right.
Right.
Humble yourself, admit God's way is better, and he will lift you up. What I love about your example with your friend is it was a very quick process.
Yeah.
Make this right choice, watch God work.
Yeah, super quick.
Right? It doesn't always work that way.
No.
But a lot of times God says, I've got the answer that you've been waiting for. You're just not relying on me. Right? You're not doing it right. Now, if we keep going, I'm going to get more self-convicted. So we probably need to work towards wrapping this up.
All right. I like it. I want them to be more convicted, guys. What do you think?
I'm thinking that it's a great thing. This has been a whole day. So we've been taping down here all day, and it is amazing how word after word after word after word has been so spot on for what God is doing.
It's kind of cool.
Right? James
full day of conviction.
James is concerned about that, right? He wants what's best for us. Right? He this is not about wanting to withhold anything from you.
No.
This is about, I want the things that you want.
Yeah. And we know that last verse is mega famous, right? And it's not just about boasting about tomorrow, like not knowing the right to do and, not doing what you know is right and it being sin. Like that applies to so many things, and not just things that are in here, but things that God convicts you of. Things that God convicts me of may be different than what he convicts you of because of me and my heart. So it might be a sin for me and not for you.
Yeah, amen.
So, like, there's so much more to that than just boasting about tomorrow, guys. But I guess we'll let Andy off the hook for today.
Man, it has been a long, fantastic
I guess he's ready
day.
for his pacifier.
Yeah. I might have to go turn in some scrap metal, too.
He's done talking for today.
There might be some things that we need to work through.
All right, guys. Well, we have finished James chapter 4. Holy smokes.
Yeah,
We're almost done with James. If you have any ideas for what book you'd like us to study after we're done with James, make a comment, send a note, send us a private message, and help us pick out what book we're going to study next. But in the meantime, we pray that you have an amazing Friday night with Jesus and whoever you are with. And we hope they have a great weekend and a great week. We will see you next Friday night.